One thing that I genuinely cannot understand is why all of these Christian women are suddenly saying that we can't wear pants. Where in the Bible does it say that? Because I guarantee you there is not one verse talking about pants. You know why? Because pants did not exist when the Bible was written. Okay, you got me. While the Bible does not talk about pants, it does talk about shorts. Let me explain. So the original garments that God made for Adam and Eve that we find in Genesis were tunics, which were technically really long shorts, comparable to modern day dresses. Men and women both wore them. The thing that separated men's tunics from women's tunics was the length of them. Now, we all know that doing physical labor in a dress or a skirt or a tunic is not very practical if that is your job. There are ways, you can work out wearing skirts and dresses, but doing physical labor and going to war, which is what, the men did, it was not practical to just be wearing a tunic. And so what men would do is they would make their tunic into basically a jumpsuit. So there's this phrase in the Bible called girding your loins. In the New Testament, it is metaphorical, but in the Old Testament, it was not metaphorical. So this is what it looked like to gird your loins. As we can see, this man had a long tunic on, and he did some stuff to it to make them basically into shorts. Technically, I guess this would be a jumpsuit. And when we go to Job 38, we actually see that God tells Job to gird his loins like a man. Okay, this was not something that women did publicly because it would have been immodest. When we go to Isaiah 47 verse 2, we see that the revealing of a woman's leg is considered nakedness, or in other words, immodest. And when we click on the word for leg, we actually see that it refers to the lower part of the leg. So some translations say that it's the thigh, but it's actually talking about the calf area. And the New Testament confirms this. In 1 Timothy 2 verse 9, Paul uses a very specific word for clothing, which refers to a long robe that women wore over their long tunics that completely covered their body. And here is a commentary that confirms that. So what does girding your loins or wearing shorts have anything to do with pants? Even though pants entirely cover the skin on your leg, they still outline the shape of your body the way that shorts do. Clothing is designed to cover your body. And to cover something means to hide it or conceal it. So you can be completely covering your skin while still exposing your body because of the way that your clothing outlines or draws attention to the shape of your body. The argument that a lot of Christian women use to say that we shouldn't wear pants is in reference to the verse in Deuteronomy that says we shouldn't be cross-dressing. But the thing is that there are pants that are made for men and there are pants that are made for women. The same way that there were tunics made for men and there were tunics made for women. I do not believe it matters what you wear in the privacy of your own home, but when it comes to dressing in public, women's pants, they are either very masculine or very immodest. God does not want his daughters dressing in a way that is masculine, that could come off as cross-dressing. God does not want us to dress in a way that would make people feel confused about either our sex or our sexuality. You see, the way that pants are designed, they literally outline the entire shape of your lower half. They outline all your curves. They outline the shape of your genitals. They put all of your business out there. Historically, women wore pants underneath their dresses and skirts as underwear, and there was nothing wrong with that. Think about pantaloons and bloomers. It is actually more modest to wear shorts or pants underneath your skirt or your dress than it is to just have underwear on. In America, it was actually illegal for women to just be wearing pants as their bottoms outside in public until 1923. One, because it was seen as immodest, and two, because it was seen as masculine. And the pants that were considered immodest for women to wear back then were not tight-fitting. They were not out there wearing leggings and yoga pants or skinny jeans. They were wearing loose-fitting trousers. When it comes to bottoms, there is nothing more modest than a loose-fitting skirt or dress that fully covers your legs. I know there's a lot of women who feel like there is a really big double standard when it comes to modesty between men and women in the church. And the thing about that is that men and women have different bodies. And when we look at the Bible, women are held to a higher standard of modesty than men. There is no verse in the New Testament that specifically tells men to dress modestly. Although obviously, men shouldn't just be going around showing off everything. But biblically, a man's nakedness in the Bible is only used in reference to his private areas, like the genitals, and I'm just gonna assume that, his butt is a part of that. A woman's body is objectively more attractive and has more sexual appeal than a man's. And if that upsets you, that a woman being naked is sexual, I don't know what to tell you, because nakedness is a big part of sex. When people see other people who are naked, there is physical arousal that normally happens, and you cannot change that. It was okay for Adam and Eve to not have clothing before sin because they weren't aware of their nakedness beforehand. But when they were aware of it, it was now needed to be covered because it is shameful to be openly naked. Obviously, if you are in need of medical care or anything like that. But our nakedness is sacred. And it's really similar to, vulnerability or getting emotionally naked. You only do that with people who you trust, if you're wise about it, most of the time. And that's the same way with being naked. Like, you only are supposed to do that with your spouse. And honestly, being openly naked has made women become a lot more sexualized. If you don't believe me, there are studies that actually talk about this. And so when it comes to pants, not wearing pants as a Christian woman, it's not about being legalistic. It's about loving God and loving your neighbor. The garment that 1 Timothy 2 verse 9 tells us to wear is one that, resembles a dress. It was a robe, but it was a loose garment, and pants are not loose enough to be modest for women, biblically. And so if you've been wondering about this yourself, I really hope that this brought clarity to you. I know this is a very controversial and hard topic, but I really encourage you to study the word for yourself and pray about it yourself, and God will lead you in the way that you should go.